The Crow is here. This is the remake of the 1994 film based on the James O'Barr comic. The film starred Brandon Lee, and it became a cult classic. I think, much of the reason for that had to do with Brandon Lee's tragic death. I mean, when you're watching the film, you're basically seeing a ghost, because you're like when you saw the Dark Knight with Heath Ledger. I think that it impacts how you see the movie emotionally. That you're seeing the ghost, truly, of Brandon Lee in this performance in a movie that had a lot of other great character actors in the original Crow. And I rewatched it after I saw this because I needed a palate cleanser. We will talk about the classic Crow later in contrast to this. I think what made the original Crow so popular is the story. A couple madly in love on the eve of their wedding on Halloween Eve, where she is brutally murdered.
They are brutally murdered.
This is the original. And then he returns, basically, Eric Draven from beyond to take revenge on those who killed the love of his life. And I think it's a real simple story that should have been easy to translate. But this remake misses the mark on every level. Bill Skarsgård, I think, is a very good actor. This is a terrible script that you texted me. It takes an hour to get to where the beginning of the original Crow movie began.
Hey, let me point this out. In the movie Crow, in this movie, The Crow, what is the first animal you see in the movie?
Well, I don't even.
A horse.
You're right. There's a horse.
The very first, the opening moments of this movie, you see a horse in The Crow. My problem, look, I think it's almost unfair to compare this to make comparisons with this and the original, because this movie should stand on its own. But having said that, I can't help but make comparisons between this movie and the original, because at minimum, what you should have done was you take the best parts of the original and get that in your movie. That's the key to success. What people liked about the first movie, you put it in your remake, and you hope people will like that. But it's almost as if they've gone out of their way to take everything that worked in that first movie, and not bring it here. You mentioned it earlier. Yeah, it takes about 30 minutes to an hour for this story to get to where the original Crow starts. And it's because for some reason, we needed to see 45 minutes of this love story between Eric and Shelley. For some reason, when that first 45 minutes doesn't appear in the original, we still somehow figured it out. We still somehow understood this relationship, how important it was, and why it pushed Eric Draven to the madness that he was, to the point where when he dies, you get into the classic. I'm gonna have to read it, but people once believed that when they die, a crow carries their soul, but sometimes these deaths are so horrific that they stay behind and have to kind of avenge things. That's the heart of the story. That's the beginning of the story, and they couldn't capture it all in that. The death of Shelley in the first movie is horrific.
Yeah,
it's brutal. It's brutal, and I understand why in modern times you can't tell that story.
They changed the circumstances of her death.
Yeah, her death was so brutal that when she died and when Eric died, the crow didn't carry them off to the netherworld or to wherever. In this one, she's killed by a mafia hit.
and it's over something dumb. It's over a word. By the way,
Yeah.
I don't care about this movie, and
Mhm.
I will cut to the chase. This movie is a 0 out of 10, except one scene, and I'll get to that later, which
Okay.
brings it up to maybe a 4 out of 10. But it was going to 0 because it's so spoilers here. She's murdered, this mafia hit because of she received a text of a video. But there's more complicated than that. But it's literally over a video text that
Mhm.
she sent that we don't
That she
want
received. That she
She
received.
received. Yeah, we don't want people to see it. So she received a text message and then deserves to die now. Then you see what later is in the video,
Mhm.
but all of it is so dumb. It's so dumb and unemotional. You're not in her mom's involved. It's so
Yeah.
stupid.
Here. Let me
It's
read the
so
line.
dumb.
Let me read the
I
line
hate
verbatim.
I hated this movie. I hated this movie except for one scene, and I'll tell you what
Okay.
that is.
Let
Yeah.
me
Go
read
ahead.
the line. It says something so bad happens that terrible sadness is carried with it, and the soul can't rest.
Right.
The something happens so bad. It's a mafia hit over a video.
A
Those are the
mafia
stakes.
hit. A mafia hit over a video.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
stakes. The stakes were not high enough to justify the premise of the movie. In the original, the stakes were high enough that it justified this line that the
yes.
soul couldn't rest, and you
Yes.
just don't get the sense of that in this one. The other thing, the setting of the original is set in a city on the verge of destruction. There's a gang going around burning the city down. There's so much corruption in politics on the streets. It's a dark world. In this one, it's an everyday world, and quite frankly, 80% of this movie is shot in daylight.
Yeah,
The
the original is mostly at night,
Mhm,
and the city is like a character.
mhm,
It's like Gotham City. There's such a cool vibe to it. It
yeah,
really feels like at least captured the tone of the comic. The spirit of the
mhm.
comic was captured in the original Crow. By the way, I was so angry after seeing this. I got home, I looked up on Just Watch. The Crow, the original, is on Amazon Prime. It's part of Prime.
Yeah.
It's free. But I bought it because I wanted to watch it without commercials. It's on sale for $5. I bought The Crow in 4K on Vudu, which is my favorite to buy movies. But and I had to watch it because I was so pissed off. And it's so light years ahead. Now, there's parts of it that are kind of dated, that feel dated. It's very
Sure.
90s,
Look,
but
it's not a
it
perfect
doesn't
movie by
matter.
any means. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, look, I saw the original Crow a couple months ago, beginning of summer through Fathom Events. It's I wouldn't call it a masterpiece.
No, it's not.
I wouldn't call it a perfect movie. It has flaws. It has major flaws. Brandon Lee, his performance is a bit over the top.
It's a little,
Yeah,
but
it's a little.
knowing that he's not alive, he's
Yeah.
not alive.
But
Like,
the thing is there's a charm to the original Crow.
yes,
Uh, a lot of it has to do with Brandon Lee and his performance, as weird as it was. Also, it's an homage to 80s and 90s violent horror films. I mean, the other thing is the set. You talk about the city. It's all practical. It's a model
yes,
set
yes,
versus here where again it's set in modern times. There's something about the Crow, the nature of the Crow, that you need to set it in a fantastical location, whether it's
right.
Gotham or whether it's something like that. But no, and again, 80% of it is shot in daylight, which speaks to tone. It's not a dark movie if it's not shot in the dark. Um, and the tone of this movie is just off, and I feel like, oh, it frustrates me because this is the direction of Hollywood movie making right now. They just don't. They're so afraid. They're so afraid of not being politically correct, of not being woke, of offending people by the littlest thing, that it holds back its punches. And it's what was the other thing? The gray was the color choice of this movie. It's just bland.
It's bland. And by the way, the original had Ernie Hudson, David Patrick Kelly from Twin Peaks, Michael Wincott, who is a brilliant character actor who was in Alien Resurrection. We talked about that the other day. And Bai Ling. And also, by the way, I follow Bai Ling on Instagram. I like Bai Ling. Anyways, she's smoking hot in this film as a villain. Michael Wincott's his character is like a side piece, so to speak. But the original, you're right, it's not a masterpiece. But it is like this classic, and it was Brandon Lee's over the top performance. There's a tone to it. It's the story. You're so involved, and also, by the way, having grown up in the Detroit area, Devil's Night is a thing. People set fires. There are media that come from all over the world to cover the city of Detroit on Devil's Night because they will set 300-400 fires in one night. Look it up. And that was always the thing. Devil's Night was when, people would burn buildings down for insurance. Okay. Strange thing, but it's kind of based on that. But this is so bad. Now he does, Brandon Lee, he's got that sort of Wolverine healing ability.
Yeah.
He learns about it. There's some, really like gruesome deaths in it. The effects are fine. Brandon Lee he's acting with his whole body, and he's basically acting against the terrible script. The worst part is the first third of the movie, they're in prison. It's so unbelievable. They're in a prison that is co-ed with men and women.
Well, it's kind of like a psychiatric.
Wait. They all wear pink jumpsuits. Yeah. It looks so dumb. I'm like, this is a movie that is like a beloved movie for anyone who's goth, anyone who dresses in goth fashions or is into goth or mascara. This is like and they wear pink and colorful clothes. I thought it was awful. And by the way, there are two scenes, not one, two, where Bill Skarsgård puts on the black mascara. Two of them. And it's just awful. But Bill Skarsgård, he's been great. He was great in Barbarian. He was great in John Wick 4. Like
Boy Kills World, I'll throw in there.
Yeah, Boy Kills World. I like Bill Skarsgård. And also good casting. Terrible script, terrible director, awful. And there is one scene, I'll tell you what that is.
Okay, let me before you do that, let me just say
go ahead.
The movie is called The Crow.
Right.
And the crow doesn't show up until the third act.
I know. It's so dumb.
Again, the movie opens with a horse. The world, when they die, they die in water. And again, the crow doesn't show up until Act 3. In fact, the only mention of the crow is when they repeat the iconic lines at the beginning of the films, but you don't see a GD crow until the third act, which again, no one understands how to adapt a comic book, and no one knows how to adapt a movie that had already been made and that people love. Okay, go ahead. Talk about the greatest thing about this movie.
Okay, the one scene that kind of like, that's kind of a good scene. Again, a spoiler. In the third act of the film, he follows the main antagonist to an opera, and Bill Skarsgård shows up with a sword just to kill. And there are all these sort of heavies and assassins that are going to take him out, and they do not hold back. I mean, there are some really good kills, creative kills with a sword. There's one where he's holding the sword against a guy, like right against his head, and the sword goes in his mouth, and he sort of like slices. I mean, their heads.
Yeah, he opens the mouth up a bit, gives him a bit.
A bit more than a bit. So I was like, oh shoot, this scene is really like the action was good for one scene. It's maybe like they got
it wasn't worth the price to get there. Let's put it that
way.
way.
It's not, but they probably got a really good stunt coordinator to work that scene out. So I was like, oh, I'm giving this credit. So without that scene,
for me,
without
I
that
agree with
scene,
you.
let me finish.
Okay,
Without that scene, a 0. With that scene, a 4. You were gonna say?
Yeah, I was gonna say the final battle was pretty cool, but it was a bit over CG as well. And again, that just is a testament to the filmmaker here didn't understand what kind of tone they wanted to set. And
What did you give it?
I gave it a 3. So
Well,
you
I
liked
gave
it
it
better
a-
than I did.
I guess I give it a 2. If you average the 0 and the 4, it gets a 2.
Yep.
So there you go.
Oh, you're trying to prove me up by giving.
Yeah, I'm gonna outnumber you.
No, you liked it better than me. Let's just say that.
No, I like that scene. Here's what I like. I like that scene. I like Bill Skarsgård. I like nothing else about this movie. I found it so offensive.
Yeah.
I came home, I said, where can I watch the original Crow? Am I crazy? And then I bought it and I watched it after I saw The Crow, the remake. And I really enjoyed it. I was like, oh, now I remember why I generally like the film. Not a perfect film, not a masterpiece, but it really was great in tone. And
if you like the original, do not see.
Yeah, if you like the original Crow, this is crap. The Crow is crap.
Yeah.